Good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Golden Sombrero Show. Here to talk about some more spring training and preview the NL and AL Central for MLB baseball. I'm Dominic Stern, joined by Cole Bradley and Ryan Blank. Guys, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to be back.
I'm doing all right. Glad to be here to talk some baseball today.
Yes, and happy birthday to Ryan. He's a big 2-0. You feel any older today than when you woke up on Friday morning, Ryan?
Feel a little bit older, but it's not that big of a difference. I'm just ready to turn 21.
It shouldn't be that way. You should feel just about the same as when you woke up yesterday. But happy birthday, Ryan.
Thank you.
We're glad you made it to age
happy
20.
birthday.
I thought that you would have screamed so loud at the Chiefs one day that your lungs collapsed and then you would have passed. But you made it, and we're all happy.
Thank you, Dom.
Yes. All right, guys. Last week we talked about some young players who are performing well in spring training. Now spring training is really in full swing. Been at it for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks at tomorrow. Certainly been exciting. I've enjoyed watching baseball. Cole, who's been some guys that have caught your eye this past week?
There wasn't anyone who, in particular, who I really had the time to sort of watch that stood out to me. But I will say one player, and you can say it's bias or whatever, but I think Josh Rojas deserves a lot of credit for what he's been doing this spring. Especially over the past couple of weeks, he's been amazing. 370 is what he's hitting on the spring. He's got 3 home runs. And I think as someone who is a Diamondbacks fan and as other people who may know him, he's kind of a bubble player where he sits right now is like he's a fringe minor leaguer, but he could also be on the bench in the major leagues. And I think what he's doing right now is really solidifying his case to be platooning at the major league level. And I think if he keeps that up, that'll definitely be something that people can look forward to seeing out of him. Because Arizona could use some infield depth up the middle, and Josh Rojas is a guy who can provide that, especially if the bat plays. So he's one of the bigger ones who stood out to me. Amongst others, I think it was this past week, Mackenzie Gore pitched, and I tuned into that for a little bit, and he looks impressive, and I'm sure Dom can attest to that. But he's going to be really good. Yeah, he's going to be really good. So he was very impressive. Looking for big things out of him. He's obviously their top pitching prospect. He's probably the top pitching prospect in baseball. And yeah, so those are the 2 big ones who stood out to me. I didn't get the time to see too many others outside of those, but yeah.
Ryan, were there some players or prospects that you thought were impressive this past week?
You guys know who I'm going to go to first. Bobby Witt. Boy, did he crush that ball. 484 feet. Landed on the concourse. Then the next day makes a diving play at second base. People are already saying, bring the kid up. Don't. You got to give him more time. Still got Mondesi at short, which is key. But if this is an indication of the future, boy, am I so excited. I knew this kid was talented and was going to be a beast, but nothing like this. He has been incredible so far throughout camp. And I love how on a Royals Twitter, they said after he hit the home run, then the diving play, they said, what can't he do? And then some response says, drink alcoholic beverages legally, because he's 19 years old.
There you go. But
another guy I have to look at is Andrew Vaughn, the 2018 Golden Spikes winner. He's going to be on the White Sox opening day roster, I think, and he does not just know a thing about hitting home runs. He just crushes the ball if he gets a hold of it. He is going to be such a big piece of that lineup. And whether he is at first or whether he is the DH, he is going to prove to be a big piece of that lineup. Despite them losing James McCann and Encarnacion, they got a young player, Andrew Vaughn, who is going to be a beast in that lineup. And then, of course, you got Brian Hayes. I think he's done a really, really good job so far. In his first 11 at-bats, he had 4 extra base hits, which included a line of 455 average, 500 on-base percentage, then a 909 slugging percentage. So he's hitting the ball well, too. So those are my 3 guys.
Yeah, those guys have certainly all been impressive, and I think that it's certainly been fun to watch those young guys that are supposed to be on teams that have solid lineups, like Bobby Witt for the Royals and then Andrew Vaughn for the White Sox. It's going to be interesting to see where they fit in. And I don't think Witt's going to make an appearance at the major league level to start, but you never know. I mean, no one expected, obviously going back to the Padres here, but no one expected Fernando Tatis Jr. to be the opening day starter for the Padres in 2019, and he's just exploded ever since. So if the guy's good enough, put him up there. It doesn't matter how old he is.
Right.
One guy that's caught my eye is Boston Red Sox outfielder Jarren Duran. He's been one of their best prospects over the past couple of years, and they don't have a great farm system, but that's no slouch on this guy. And he's off to a good start in spring. He's only had 15 at-bats, but he has 2 home runs. He's drawn 2 walks. He's hitting .333 with an .867 slugging percentage for a 1.278 OPS. That's just super impressive. In their outfield, it's not the situation that it once was. Just a couple years ago when the Red Sox won the World Series, they had Mookie Betts on right, Jackie Bradley Jr. in his prime in center field, and then out in left field they had Andrew Benintendi with JD Martinez as the DH. And now all of a sudden, the only guy that's still there is JD Martinez, and he might play some left field this year if their outfield situation doesn't improve. But Jarren Duran could be a guy that could fill in for that and then push JD Martinez back to the DH because they're going to have Alex Verdugo in center. And I imagine Hunter Renfroe is going to be their starting right fielder. My guy, Hunter Renfroe, home run in Game 4 of the World Series. That is absolutely electric game. So their outfield, very up in the air. And Jarren Duran could certainly be a guy that could slot in for that outfield spot. And, I try not to make this about the Padres, but Will Myers hit yet another home run in spring training. And the Padres MLB.com beat writer brought up a good point. Will Myers, he always plays well in spring training, but just how good Will Myers is every year in the Cactus League. And he was trying to throw out the idea that Will Myers might be the greatest Cactus League player ever. And I'm looking at his stats, and here are his batting averages since joining the Padres in spring training. Or just here's his OPS. In 2015, 800. In 2016, 890. In 2017, 1.229. In 2018, 0.994. 833 in 2019, 0.972 in 2020. And this year, in 18 at-bats so far, he has 3 home runs. They're all solo shots. And he's got a 1.31 OPS with a 389 batting average. So, I don't care to go that deep into it because I have much better things to do with my time, but Will Myers might be the greatest Cactus League player of all time. And not that that means anything because it's spring training, but coming off a very strong 2020 campaign, Will Myers certainly looks like he's rewarding the Padres for not trading away his contract and that he's playing to the $20 million that he's going to be due this year, which as a Padres fan is great because I know that you guys know that I was very on the record of get that contract out of here. And I'm glad I was wrong. I don't care. I want the Padres to win. I want our Padres players to do well. I just didn't think he was going to do this well, and I'm glad that he proved me wrong. So any other players or teams we want to talk about, or we want to jump into our standings breakdown?
The one thing I do have to say is you talk about Will Myers being so good and then in the Cactus League and then just not being as great in the regular season. That is the Royals. Always are at the top of the Cactus League and one of the best teams. They have one of the best records right now, and yet it never really translates to winning in the regular season. And the one year they were really successful, 2014, 2015, they were not at the top. It's kind of like a reverse effect.
Yeah, no. Kansas City Royals currently in first place in the Cactus League standings at 9-3. So if the Cactus League were to just stop like it did last year at this point, which of course is sad, they would have the Golden Cactus.
Only thing they're winning this year.
You said it, not me. I was going to say it in a little bit, but you said it anyways. Cole, anything else, or you want to jump into the standings?
I mean, I just have one more thing that I kind of want to go back to the Bobby Witt thing because I have something a little bit to say about the whole service time thing with him, and you brought up the whole thing with Tatis, and I guess I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I mean, if the guy is gonna absolutely rake in spring training and he's showing all signs that he can hit major league pitching and that he's ready to perform at the next level, I'd give him a shot and I'd throw him on the opening day roster and I'd see how he does because I think too many teams are so tentative with how they want to use their service time. They're so like gung ho on making sure they have the absolute maximum amount of time to retain a player, and it's all because I feel like there's not a lot of faith there, even though sometimes you have to take a risk in order to see if things pan out. And I think the Padres and Tatis are a perfect example of that. So, I mean, if I were the Royals, I'd honestly just give him a shot. And if he doesn't do well, send him back down, give him a little more time. You can always play that game. But I think it's worth taking the risk if he's going to keep doing what he's doing. So that's the way I see it, especially if they want to contend anytime soon. I think that they need to start showcasing that young up and coming talent. And I think if he's at the forefront of that, then he needs to be up as soon as possible.
Right. Because Ryan, who's the Royals starting second baseman supposed to be?
Nicky Lopez, but they brought in Hanser Alberto from the Orioles to compete with him.
Yeah,
so,
he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's a good hit.
I like him.
He's a solid hitter, so I'm fine right now with it. I want more from him. I want more from Nicky Lopez. I think this is his last chance. And I don't know what the Royals are thinking, but I would love to see Bobby Witt up this year. But if it's a September call-up and then we see him finally showcase what he can do, he could be on the opening day roster next year. But I don't think they're going to put him up this year. I think they want him to play a full season of pro ball before they bring him up. So I feel like that's what's going to happen. And it could be the same thing with Asa Lacy. But I want to see the Royals bring up their young talent as soon as possible because I want to see another World Series.
Naturally. Must be nice to have seen one. I mean, at least Cole's franchise has won one in his lifetime. But, I mean, like, barely at that.
I was barely alive, dude. So
right, I know. I know.
It's cool that they have one, but I can't say I was emotionally attached, but it's cool. Right,
because I don't. I'm hoping that it'll come in 5 months, but that's stop. I have faith.
It's ambitious.
I mean, I don't think it's that ambitious, but
I don't think so either. But
right. Everyone else seems to think I'm a clown for thinking the Padres have a shot at winning the World Series, and I'm just like, okay. All right.
They have a shot. They have a shot to do it. I don't think they're going to, but they have a shot.
They have like the third best odds. Like, I mean, I'll get torn down by this team if they let me down. I don't care. We have a shot. Anyways, this isn't about the Padres. So let's talk about the AL and the NL Central. We'll start at the NL Central. That way we can close with Brian's division. I think that seems fair. So National League Central, last year we all picked the Reds to win, and I think we were all like pretty convinced that they were going to win the Central. And then the lineup, they brought in Moustakis, they brought in Castellanos, and they were bringing back guys like Suarez and Votto. And I mean, I guess that's like the majority of their lineup right there. And then they just disappointed. And the pitching staff it lived up to the hype. I mean, Sonny Gray was their 3-pitcher, and he had like a 3.70 ERA. Luis Castillo had one of his best years of his career. Trevor Bauer, of course, won the Cy Young. And their bullpen towards the second half of the season was really solid. But they didn't win the division. The Chicago Cubs ended up on top of the division. However, the Cubs roster is not the same. They lost their best player from last year, which was Yu Darvish. A lot of their batters really disappointed in the second half of the season after performing well in the first month. So they kind of fell off towards the end. The Brewers and Cardinals both made the playoffs. The Cardinals, of course, acquired Nolan Arenado from the Colorado Rockies for not a ton. Austin Gomber actually looked really good against the Padres. 3 scoreless innings. He looked good. I will shout him out. And then the other team is the Pirates, and we're going to predict them to get last because they're probably the worst team in all of baseball. thoughts and prayers to all Pirates fans. Although they do with the Steelers, it's not an easy life they live. So what do you guys make of this division before we get into our standings and what we think of it?
Overall, it's very weak, to be completely honest. And I feel like that's how it's been for a little bit now. It's crazy to think how, I mean, not even 10 years ago, this division was actually one of the strongest in baseball. It's always been up in the air. I mean, and that's sort of the beauty of it, is you have at least 4 teams, I feel like, who at any given moment are going to compete for a postseason berth. And so that's what makes it fun. But I think that this year more than ever, you definitely have, 4 teams that got significantly worse, and you have the Cardinals, who I'll get to later, that got just better than everyone else alone by acquiring Arenado. And I think that, there's still definitely some stuff they have to go out and prove in order to, cement themselves as a division winner, as a team that's going to compete in the postseason again. But I think the Cardinals have always just found a way to win. That's an organization that's just so consistent in how they perform every single year, and I don't doubt it. But I think for the other 4 teams, it's just sort of competing for second. I really don't see it any other way, to be completely honest. At the moment, I don't think there's a whole lot of other. There's much more competition within the division. I think maybe the Brewers could challenge them. I mean, if the Cubs get off to as hot of a start as they did last year, then maybe they can stick in it for the long haul. But I don't see that personally. So I feel like it's the Cardinals and sort of everyone else, and that's just the way I see it.
I agree. This is a Cardinals division to lose. They did themselves a huge favor by going out and getting, in my opinion, the league's best third baseman in Nolan Arenado. He had a down year last year, whatever. He is still incredible in the field. He's got a tremendous bat. And they now, in my opinion, also have the best corner duo in the league with he and Goldschmidt. So I really like that team. I think that Jack Flaherty's also going to have a bounce back year. He struggled last year, but I think he'll bounce back. So I think that this is going to be the Cardinals. And it's basically a race for second place for the Reds, the Brewers, and the Cubs. Because we all know the Pirates are going to get last. This is the worst team in baseball. And then it comes down to, can one of those 3 teams get hot enough and play well enough to where they can be in the fight for a wild card. That's the main thing for them, because I don't see really a scenario, unless the Cardinals just fall off the face of the earth and really struggle. This is their division. So, and I think the Brewers could challenge them. The Brewers have a talented roster, but this is a Cardinals division.
Right, and their 2021 win totals, according to the Action Network, they got the Chicago Cubs at 79.5 wins. They have, I got to try and find these now, the Milwaukee Brewers at 82.5, the Pittsburgh Pirates at 59.5, the Cincinnati Reds at 82.5, and the St. Louis Cardinals at 86.5. So yeah, like you guys mentioned, really weak division. There's really no other way around it, and I don't see a way this division gets 2 teams in unless they do expand the playoffs, which all signs are pointing towards they're not going to do that. And that, of course, really helped this division because they ended up getting 4 teams in last year, despite 2 of them being below 500, I think. I think the Reds were right there. It's going to be easy to pull up. And let's see. Reds were 31 and 29. The Cardinals were 30 and 28. So it's a really weak division. Like that, you can't get around it. And I don't see it being that much better. Like you guys mentioned, Reds got worse, Cubs got worse. I don't know if the Brewers necessarily got worse, but they didn't necessarily get better. I mean, they added Jackie Bradley Jr., but
and Colton Wong.
Right. So I mean, I guess they got better. And we'll get into our standings breakdown of it in just a bit, but the Cardinals, they really got better. And they did lose Colton Wong, like Ryan just mentioned, but they're a team of exceptional depth, and I think that they will they'll find a way to replace Colton Wong with a guy that we don't think is going to be that good. He's going to end up being good because they're the Cardinals, and that's what they do. And they also have young, promising rookie Dylan Carlson, who I think could be a really strong Rookie of the Year candidate. He was very, very good in the latter half of the year after he got sent down and then recalled back up. So those are some things to watch out for. So we all mentioned it, the Pirates, 5th place. Is there any realm of the possibility that we see this team finishing in 4th place, or is it just a lock?
I think it's a lock, but I think, as much as we've kind of crapped on the Pirates so far, I guess I kind of want to just take a moment and just say that there are a few bright spots and things to look out for, I guess, if you're a Pirates fan. I mean, like you guys mentioned at the beginning of the show, Ke'Bryan Hayes is probably going to start getting everyday at-bats from here on out. I think he's sort of the guy that they want to – the future of the franchise, if you will. Him and Nick Gonzalez, obviously. But he's a long way from being a factor here. But I think, he's going to definitely make waves and start, cementing himself into superstardom at some point. I think you got to watch out for him and see how he prospers and develops. But this team's in the midst of a long rebuild. They're not going to be good for a long time, and that's okay. You just have to sort of hang on to, whatever's going your way right now. And I mean, the Pirates over the past few seasons have just dealt, most of their core. I mean, Tyone's gone. Obviously Meadows is gone. Glasnow is gone. Cole is long gone. Starling Marte is gone. All those guys are gone. Josh Bell is gone as well. So, again, you're sort of just in the midst of this rebuild. And I think, if there's ever been a bright spot for this team, it's Ke'Bryan Hayes and, whoever else that they're going to bring up this year who's a top prospect. And I think that there's still a lot to hope for. But, I mean, obviously, there's still a long ways from being, anything serious. So I think you just got to sort of hang on to the positives if you're a Pirates fan, to say the least.
Pirates are getting last. Like Cole said, there is some talent. Ke'Bryan Hayes, I think, is going to be a star for them, someone that is going to be kind of a face of their franchise. They still got Cole Tucker. They've got some talent. It's just they're not there yet. So I have them in last.
Yeah, Cole Tucker is really disappointed too so far. We'll see if 2021 can be his year to break out. Obviously, 2019 he was up and down, and then 2020 was really weird year. So yeah, Ke'Bryan Hayes, he was super impressive. He, along with Dylan Carlson, are the 2 favorites for National League Rookie of the Year, as they should be. They showed a lot of promise coming up last year. And I was trying to imagine, where the Pirates are in 4 to 5 years, because they've put so much resources into just tanking the past couple of years. That, of course, exemplified with trading really their only 3 good players from last year, which is Musgrove, and then Tyon, who didn't play, and then Josh Bell, who had a really good first half of the 2019 season and has been pretty average ever since. So, yeah, last place, 5th place Pirates. Ryan, I'm going to go to you on this one. Who do you see finishing in 4th place in the NL Central?
It's tough. It really is. The thing is, the Reds lineup has so much power that I think that they could get hot and be better than the Cubs. So I'm actually going to say the Cubs get 4th. I also think their pitching staff is really weak, which is another piece of it. So I'm going to go with the Cubs because of the potential in the lineup for the Reds, and just the pitching staff for the Cubs is just really weak. So I'm going to go with the Cubs getting 4th.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, it really comes down to faith in one team or the other's pitching staff. And I got to say, I have way more faith in the Reds pitching staff than I do in the Cubs. I mean, the Cubs just don't have it. I mean, especially now with Darvish gone, Quintana's gone. I mean, they're mediocre at best, that rotation is. And it's going to be kind of a sight to see if they even do like good at all this year. I'd be really surprised. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is going to have to pull a lot of weight this year. I think Zach Davies will be solid too, but I think aside from that, this rotation, this bullpen, there's not a lot there. And you can score as many runs as you want, but I think there's plenty of teams that exemplify the whole. It doesn't matter how many runs you score; no lead is safe if you have a bullpen in a rotation that's going to give up the kind of runs that I feel like the Cubs are going to end up giving up this year because they're just not good from a pitching staff standpoint. And again, I have a lot more faith in the Reds and their rotation and their ability to develop pitchers, particularly in a hitter's ballpark. They play very well, and they have Sonny Gray, and they have, Luis Castillo, and they have those guys who are at least solid and can sort of lock things down. But I just don't see that with the Cubs, and so that's why I think at least now I don't really see them any higher than fourth place. I'm not going to say that, but I could see them. I really feel like, at best they're a third place team. I just don't see them getting any higher than fourth, so I have them at fourth.
Yeah, I think it's really tough to decipher between the Cubs and the Reds for who gets third and who gets fourth because they're two teams that are way more talented than what their records are going to be. And you look at the talent for both these teams on the starting pitching staffs, and you got Sonny Gray and Luis Castillo for the Reds, and then you have Kyle Hendricks and Zach Davies and a couple of other guys. You got to remember John Lester no longer in this rotation. He's brought that veteran presence for them. That's gone. So I don't know where I see these two teams finishing, but I think I'm going to trust more of the Cubs hitters to rebound in 2021 as opposed to some of the Reds hitters. Like I trust that Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and Javier Baez aren't just going to suck like they did in 2020. So, Ryan, you smirked, but it's true. So I think
it's true. I know it's true.
So I'm going to put the Cubs in third, which means I'm going to put the Reds here in fourth place. I just don't know where. And you also got to remember the Reds, they acquired Archie Bradley at the trade deadline last year. He's no longer in their bullpen. They traded away Raisel Iglesias this offseason to the Angels. So all of a sudden, there's two of their best right-handed relief arms that are gone. And their bullpen was a big concern for them going into last season. And like I said, it wasn't very good in the first month. It definitely cost them some games, cost them some playoff seedings. So they wouldn't have had to play the Braves in the first round. And then, of course, you still have Amir Garrett out there. You still have Lucas Sims out there, but it's just not as good as where it needs to be. So I'm going to put the Reds here in fourth place, actually. And so do we all have the Reds and Cubs flip-flopping? So whoever you had at fourth, the other teams in third? All right, why don't you guys talk about your third place team for a little bit? Start with Cole.
Yeah, so I just again going back to the Cubs, I just don't really have that much faith in their pitching staff. I seriously don't. Like you said, Dom. Their offense, I feel like could definitely rebound. But that's what needs to happen. And the problem is I feel like there might be a little too much pressure there to have these guys, for all these guys to rebound sort of all at once, because that's kind of what's going to need to happen. I feel like in order if this team really wants to make waves here, but yeah, I don't really see them as anything but sort of a bottom dweller, sort of middle caliber team. Oh wait, I'm talking about the Reds. What am I doing? No, sorry. So the Reds are my third place team. And yes, flip flop. I just have way more faith in the Reds pitching staff, and I think that again, you mentioned like Lucas Sims, you mentioned Archie Bradley's gone now, but they have Michael Lorenzen, who's pretty solid as well. Amir Garrett, who's obviously pretty good when he's on. So I still think that they're much better in my eyes, and can definitely sort of, be of a bit more help as far as the pitching is concerned. And yeah, Castellanos is going to need to bounce back for sure. He started off really hot, but really sputtered out towards the middle and end of the year. So they're going to need a much bigger performance out of him this year, obviously. And yeah, I just think that they're sort of middle caliber, and there's really nothing to it. After losing a guy like Bauer, especially, who was such a big part of the reason why they even got as far as they did last year, they take a huge hit there, losing him. But, they still have Sonny Gray, and they still have Luis Castillo, and I think those guys, as your top two, are more than enough to sort of help you win at least every fourth and every fifth day. So that's all there is to it for me. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they shape up this year without him, without Trevor Bauer, that is. But I still see them as better than the Cubs.
Yeah, and then I guess I'll talk a little bit more about the Cubs. I mean, I expect a bounce back year from all Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, and Anthony Rizzo at the plate. They're just two talented of hitters, and this is their last ride together. I mean, Javi Baez, free agent, Chris Bryant, free agent. I'm pretty sure Anthony Rizzo is also a free agent at the end of this year. So, we saw this with the Royals, I believe, in 2017, Ryan, when all their players, they played really well, and then the GMs decided to try and hold off and instead of trying to take advantage of their value, not trying to take a jab at the Royals, but they all had much better 2018 seasons or 2017 seasons than they had in the past couple of years. So I think we could see a similar thing with the Cubs, yet they're still not good enough to go on and be a playoff team. So I think that we could see that. And Cole, you mentioned the pitching staff concerns. They're definitely there, but I also think there's some pitching staff concerns with the Reds outside of Gray and Castillo. So these are two really bad choices. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with Cole. I just have more faith in that starting rotation. They still got Sonny Gray and Castillo, and then the Cubs really just have Zach Davies and then Kyle Hendricks, and I would take the Reds over that. And then, yeah, you brought up some very big arms that the Reds lost, but they also brought in Sean Doolittle, which I think is going to help a little bit, late innings. And I just think that looking top to bottom at that lineup, if that Reds lineup gets hot, that team can win a lot of games. And I think part of their struggles was Nick Castellanos did not have a good season last year. He only hit in the low 200s. So if he can turn it around, then the lineup will produce more. Same with Eugenio Suarez. There's a lot of guys that can turn it around in a 162-game season. So I just trust that lineup more too as well.
That's fair. So I assume from what we've talked about a little bit ago that we are all going to have the Brewers in second place, right? All right. Ryan, why don't you talk about the Brewers for a little bit?
The thing with the Brewers is I expect a big bounce back year from Yelich. He was bad last year. He was really bad. But I think that he was coming off of an injury, so I think that him getting back into it will help. So I expect a big year from him. And I like the outfield. Of course, you could say I'm biased because I still love Lorenzo Cain, one of my favorite players in the league. They added JBJ, he's not in his prime anymore, but he's still a great defensive left fielder. Adding Colton Wong is a great guy to have at second base. And I just think that they have a very good back end of that bullpen too. Late innings, you're trailing, you're probably not going to beat them with Devin Williams and Josh Hader. There's just so much talent in those two, and they've got a pretty good bullpen. And I think that this team is more complete and more well-rounded than the Reds and the Cubs. So that's why I'm giving them second place.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel the same exact way. I expect bounce back years from Yelich. I expect to see Keston Hiura sort of take a bit of a leap as well. Obviously, bringing in Colton Wong and Jackie Bradley Jr., that's huge, especially defensively for both the infield and the outfield. Like both of those guys a lot. But again, going back to the pitching, I think if there's anything the Brewers have going for them, it's pitching, and it's pretty underrated. It doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, obviously they had Devin Williams last year, who was, we've talked about him enough, and what more can you say? Corbin Burns was really good last year. Justin Topa, Brandon Woodruff, obviously the ace of that staff, really good. Josh Hader, same exact thing. He struggled a little bit last year, but he's probably one of, if not the most dominant reliever in the game, especially when he's on. So I just think the rotation and particularly the bullpen is just going to be huge for them once again. They're not going to be a team, I feel like, that lights up the scoreboard every single night. But that's not really how they play. They sort of just they hit you with a couple big jabs, and then they let the bullpen sort of take care of the rest. They're kind of like the Rays of the National League, I feel like, given how strong that bullpen is. And, they have a couple of bruisers in the lineup who just get the job done. And then, they sort of figure it out the rest of the way. I think that's sort of their bread and butter. I could see them as a fringe playoff team. I think it's tough because the National League is going to be very, very competitive this year. We already talked about the East and how we feel about them. And, the Central is sort of the opposite of the East, I feel like, this year. But if all things go well and, the Brewers can stay healthy and they can perform the way they did, particularly down the stretch in 2019, I can see this team making the postseason. I think right now, where I see it right now, I think they sort of miss out just by a couple games. But I think if they play their cards right, they stay healthy, and that pitching, carries them like it has before. I think that they can definitely submit their case as a bona fide playoff team. So.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit it on the head. Yelich needs to have a rebound year. I think he will. I've been a big proponent of the fact that he's not the kind of player that he was for his 2 MVP seasons in 2018 and 2019. But I certainly think that he can be a 900 OPS guy, 950 OPS guy, not that 1050, 1100 guy that we saw. That's just not who he is, and that's perfectly fine because he can be a very good baseball player even if he's not that guy. Then Lorenzo Cain, Jackie Bradley Jr., how they mix out in the outfield. Then Avisaíl Garcia, is he going to have a bounce back year, perform like how he did with the Rays and with the White Sox? I believe it was the White Sox prior to that. And then Colton Wong, they bring him in. Can some of their infielder guys, Keston Hiura, Luis Urias, Orlando Arcia, can those guys step up? Can Daniel Vogelbach continue how he played for the Brewers like how he did in September after he was claimed by them on waivers? He was a fantastic bat in that middle of the lineup. And then the pitching staff. I mean, Devin Williams burst onto the scene. He's incredible. Josh Hader, best left-handed relief pitcher in all baseball. Had some command issues in 2020, but as we all know, he can pitch perfectly fine without the command issues. And then the starting rotation, highlighted by the 2 really good pitchers in Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns finally put it all together. Everyone knew he was going to eventually with that 97-mile-an-hour fastball and just lethal off-speed. So those 2 guys are going to carry the rotation, and we'll see who else can fill in behind them. But I agree. I like the Brewers to be over 500. I think they're a very solid ball club managed by a very solid manager in Craig Counsell, but the team at the top, the St. Louis Cardinals, is just too good. And I'll start by talking about them. Ryan, you mentioned bounce back year from Jack Flaherty. Flaherty actually wasn't that bad. He just had 1 outing where he allowed 9 runs, and that, of course, inflates your ERA significantly. And then they also have really good starting pitching outside of that. Kwon Hung Kim came over from the KBO last year and was a very good starting pitcher for them. Adam Wainwright had a very solid year. Dakota Hudson's been a very good pitcher for them. So the rotation is just really solid, and the bullpen is fantastic for them as well. Alex Reyes, fantastic pitcher. Giovanni Gallegos, really good pitcher for them as well. I forget his name, but Cabrera, left-handed reliever, he was throwing 100 in the playoffs. I mean, you just don't see guys like that often. Andrew Miller, still a really good reliever. So they have a ton of guys out in that bullpen that are going to make them really nasty. And then the lineup, it's fairly solid. Like you guys mentioned, Paul Goldschmidt had a really good 2020 season after a down 2019 season where he still had like a 120 OPS plus. But, he wasn't – everyone's like, oh, he got out of Chase Field and he wasn't hitting. I'm like, no, stop this. He's really good.
Also launched like 30 homers.
Right. No, people are idiots, right? I'm sure you've picked up on that. And then they, of course, bring in Nolan Arenado. Paul DeYoung, still a really good shortstop. Second base is going to be interesting. And then Dylan Carlson, I've talked about him earlier. I think that he is phenomenal. Really disciplined player at the plate. Has a ton of power. Can go to the opposite field. Can pull the ball down the line. Can also play some really good defense out there. He was playing center field. He was playing left field. He's just such a stud. He's that prototypical Cardinals player that the NL Central fans are going to hate for a very long time because he's going to be very good. So I'll let you guys take the floor about the Cardinals. We'll go to Ryan first here.
Yeah, you guys know me. I'm not a fan of the Cardinals. I don't like the Cardinals at all. But this team is extremely talented. Like we all said, this is their division to lose. They've got Arenado, who I'm really tempted to pick as my MVP, even though I think it's between him and Juan Soto, 2 of the best players in the league, 2 of the best hitters. And then Goldschmidt, still a tremendous hitter, great in the field. Got one of the greatest catchers behind the plate still in Yadier Molina. Paul DeYoung, I think, is extremely underrated. Yes, did they lose Colton Wong? But here's the thing about the Cardinals. Like you said earlier, Dom, they've got so much depth that they can bring someone in that nobody knows, and they'll make him good. That's how they work. That's how they roll. That's how they work. And I think that this team each year is consistently good. You don't see a Cardinals team that's just bad. You don't see a bad Cardinals team. They're consistently winning. And I think that trend continues, and they're going to win the Central because they added a huge bat, and they're just always there. They're consistently at the top of that division, and they've got the rotation, and they've got the bullpen to back it up as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. Ryan kind of hit it on the head. This is sort of their division to lose. We've talked about it sort of the whole time and how this is one of the weaker divisions, but the Cardinals are that team that just stands out above the rest. I think bringing back Wainwright and Yachty for another season, that's really going to make a difference for the back end of their rotation. Obviously expecting big things out of Flaherty. Miles Michaelis, sort of same thing. You guys talked about, the offense as well. But, I mean, overall, I mean, just everything top to bottom on this team is pretty solid. I think the bullpen's going to be a little bit of a question. Like you said, Gallegos is good. And they have a few more solid arms back there, but I think that's going to be sort of their biggest question mark. They'll definitely score runs. They'll definitely light up the scoreboard in that facet. But I think just really what it's going to come down to for them is just can they maintain over a full season? Because obviously last year, they were, they had the whole COVID thing with the team, and they were holed up in their hotels for I think it was a couple weeks or something without playing games.
2.5 weeks.
Yeah. And, I think they sort of just did everything they needed to do at the right time. They sort of just were thrown back into the fire, and they just started winning games, and they sort of caught up to everyone else and were able to squeak into the playoffs. And obviously that's hopefully not going to be the case for them this year. And this is a full season, but I just have so much faith because they're such a consistent team. They've really never not been a contender. It feels like, and sort of bringing back those veteran leaders like Wainwright, like Yadier Molina, obviously mixed in with that young talent. You mentioned Dylan Carlson is going to continue to just be really, really good. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is another guy who has the potential to be pretty good. A lot of power from him. There's just so much potential on this team. And I mean, again, they're one of the weaker teams in this NL, which is weird to say because they're probably going to win their division, but that's just how competitive the National League is. But I mean, again, if all things go right for them, I could easily see them going to the championship series again and, sort of competing for another World Series berth. But it's going to take a lot for them. But I will say that, I mean, at bare minimum, they're definitely the best team in the Central. I don't think that's really disputable, to say the least.
No. And the last time the Cardinals had a losing season, they went 78-84 in 2007. So they've had a winning season the past 12 years. I mean, you can't ask for much more out of the fan base. Yeah, they've missed the playoffs 5 times in that time period just because they've never they've never been really good except for in 2015 when they won 100 games. But they're just such a talented team and such a well-run organization. They're never bad, like you guys mentioned. So let's jump into the AL Central. Let's not break it down as a whole. Let's jump into it just because we have right around 15 minutes left. 5th place, I have the Detroit Tigers. Do you guys have that as well?
I have the Tigers.
Yeah, I agree. I have the Tigers.
Yeah. Really young and talented team. They need a couple more years to put it together, though. That pitching staff is going to be so disgusting in a couple of years. We'll see if Casey Mize or Tariq Skubal can have better years because they weren't that good in 2020. But they're young pitching prospects who got thrown into the fire during a pandemic. So who knows? They have to be better. And then they still have Matt Manning, Alex Faedo, a couple of other young pitching prospects down there. So they'll be good. We don't need to talk much about them because they'll finish in 5th. So 4th place, I found this a really challenging spot because to me it was between Ryan's Royals and the Cleveland Indians, who, of course, traded away their best player and their second best pitcher. And now they find themselves in an interesting spot because their lineup should suck in 2020 because they also lost one of their other best hitters, Carlos Santana. So, Ryan, I know you have the Royals in third place just because I've talked with you. Give us your pitch on why the Royals will be in front of the Indians.
Here's why I think the Royals will be in front of the Indians. I think the lineup is more complete. I think the Royals have a very complete lineup, maybe besides in center field and at second base with Lopez and probably Dyson or Michael A. Taylor in center, unless they move some stuff around. But looking at it, Whit Merrifield is consistently one of the best contact hitters in the game. Got Benintendi, who is still a great defender, and I think is also going to be a solid hitter. I think Hunter Dozier, consistently, he has one of the best exit velos in the league, consistently. Can he just find the holes? And I think he can. And then Carlos Santana is a big add. Salvador Perez, who was incredible last year. Jorge Soler. This lineup is one of the best lineups I have seen from the Royals. Scratch that. This is the best lineup I've seen from the Royals since 2017. And arguably, they could put up nearly that production if they can just hit. And what they're proving is that they can. So the question for the Royals is center field and second base. And that could be averted if they go with Ryan O'Hearn at first base and then put Santana at DH and put Soler in right, because O'Hearn is hitting the cover off the ball. So, and then looking at the rotation, you still got Brady Singer, who showed a lot of potential last year. Brad Keller, who is the ace of the staff. Mike Minor coming in, who they're thinking is going to be in the rotation. Still got guys like Chris Bubich, who I think is going to be someone who could break out this year. And then Duffy and Junis. Then the bullpen, the back end's looking really good for me. Looking at Barlow, Stalmont, and Holland, that's very solid. So, and I think that, yeah, the Indians have the better pitching, the better rotation, but the Royals have the better lineup, and that's what I'm going with.
Cole, who do you think is going to finish in third or who do you have in fourth? Let's just go there.
I have Kansas City in fourth. I do like how they're growing. I do think that they're going to be solid, but to be completely honest, I mean, you mentioned how the Indians lineup, I mean, definitely is not what it was. But, I mean, let's not forget, they still do have Jose Ramirez, obviously. They've got Franmil Reyes, who I think was really good for them last year. Eddie Rosario, I thought was a really solid pickup for them. I know that guy's not like the best, like, you know, on base kind of guy, but that guy absolutely just rocks the baseball. So I think their lineup is still like, you know, has the potential to do a lot of damage. And while I don't think it's what it was, I still think they're formidable. And I mean, that pitching staff is just, I still think is pretty ridiculous. It's still top tier in my mind. And I still like their bullpen. Not as much per se as I did before, but I think their bullpen's still pretty solid as well. I think they still find a way to finish in third. I could see the Royals finishing in third, but I still think I need to see a little more out of them, just solely because it's not because I don't think that they have everything they need right now to be a third place team, but I think they just have some things to prove for me as far as, you know, the pitching staff is concerned, as far as the bullpen's concerned. And I just need to see a little more from them to consider them a third place team. I just think where it stands right now, I think the Indians are just a little bit better than them. Yeah, that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I too have the Indians finishing in third place. And to me, it was looking at, you know, you have the strength of these two teams, the Indians pitching staff and the Royals lineup. And to me, I feel like I give the advantage there to the Indians pitching staff. And then you look at the Royals lineup, the Royals pitching staff and the Indians lineup. And then I give the advantage to the Royals pitching staff there slightly, though. And there's a bigger gap between the first two than the second two. And that's what made it close for me. And the Royals, their team total for Action Network is 72.5. I would 100% take the over. I think that's one of the easier team totals in this. I think the Royals are around 77 to 78 wins. and the Indians are right around 500. So it's close. I think that the Royals next year are certainly going to be better than the Indians, but I think for right now, I'd still take the Indians pitching staff. They still have one of the best pitchers in baseball, Shane Bieber. Plesac has been incredible the past couple of years, and they got a couple other young guys, McKenzie, Savali, and Cal Quantrill, who could certainly fill in that rotation because they've traded away a lot of guys. They've traded away Bauer, Kluber, Clevenger, and Carrasco in the past couple of years, and they still have a really good rotation.
That just shows how deep their pitching prospects are. They consistently produce top-tier pitchers, and it's insane, and I hate it.
Mm-hmm. And then let's talk about the top two teams. We both have the White Sox, all three of us have the White Sox and the Twins at the top. And the Twins, of course, have won this division the past 2 years. Do we see the White Sox overthrowing them at the top? I'll go to our AL Central expert, Ryan. Who do you have on top of this division, the Twins or the White Sox?
White Sox. I think the White Sox are so good. And I hate to say it because I hate the White Sox, but this team is really good. Yeah, they lost James McCann. Yeah, they lost Edwin Encarnacion, but they've got Andrew Vaughn coming up, who's probably going to fill in at DH. Got the reigning AL MVP. They've got Yasmani Grandal. The rotation added Lance Lynn. The bullpen is solid. They added the best closer in baseball. They've got Luis Robert. They've got Eloy Jimenez. They've got so much talent, and they're so young. And that was my thing last year was the reason I did not pick them to win the division, was that they were really young. And now they have some experience under their belts, and I think that this is their year, and they're going to overtake the Twins. And I forgot to name Tim Anderson, the leader of that team. When he returned last year, that's when they really hit their stride and took off. So I'm taking the White Sox to win this division. They are just so dangerous. And now that they have a year under their belt, they're just going to be that top team. I think they're the second best team in the AL.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think the White Sox, as far as this offseason is concerned, if the Padres didn't have the offseason they had, I think they're the clear winners here. I mean, they were very active. They went out. They addressed some issues if they had any, and they got a lot better. They added depth to that pitching staff. They added depth to that bullpen for sure. Obviously, that lineup is killer. I mean, that lineup is ridiculous. I think their only limitation, and I was not a fan of this from the start, is Tony La Russa. I really don't see him being I see him being a big limitation for them, solely because I just think with the youth that this team possesses, and sort of as old school as he is, I don't know if that really meshes well. And so maybe that sort of is their hindrance, and how they get limited in the way that they perform on the field this year. But other than that, I think they're definitely in the clear. I mean, obviously, we talk about Luis Robert. Eloy Jimenez is an absolute monster. I mean, Jose Abreu is the reigning MVP. That alone speaks for itself. Tim Anderson. You go to the rotation, and you got Giolito, Lance Lynn, Dallas Keuchel. I mean, these guys are solid. And then you go to the bullpen. They have Garrett Crochet, who is the guy hasn't played one minor league game, and he probably won't end up doing so because he's that dominant. He's an incredible left-handed arm for them. They got Liam Hendricks this year, who I think we all agreed is the best relief pitcher in all of baseball, at least right now. And I mean, that team's dangerous. That team is going to win a lot of games. And like Ryan said, I agree. I think they're definitely second best, if not the best team in the American League. I just think they're so solid top to bottom. But again, I really want to see how that team meshes with their new manager, because I could see that sort of really being a huge factor in their, as a misfortune for them this year. But overall, I think the White Sox are in a really, really good spot.
They really are. And I think the Mets also had a case to be the winners of the offseason for you, Cole. They had a fantastic offseason as well. But yeah, like you mentioned, the White Sox bringing in Lance Lynn, only having to give up one prospect. Now, I mean, Dane Dunning's a very good prospect, and it's only a year of Lance Lynn, but you got to go out and try and get that championship. And Lance Lynn, I think, is going to be a very valuable pitcher, not just because he's good, but because he's a workhorse. And he's going to be able to help that White Sox team get over the hump of pushing from a 60-game season to a 162-game season. So that'll help them out a ton. And like you mentioned, Liam Hendricks, he's going to be a stud. My one concern with the White Sox is that last year they were much better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching, and they didn't really go out to try and get themselves any left-handed bats to help them get better. They added Adam Eaton, but I mean, Adam Eaton isn't like all that, and I don't think that necessarily helps out their problems because they were a couple of games below 500 against a right-handed pitching last year, and that's not good, including their 2 playoff losses to the A's. They beat Jesus Luzardo, the lefty, and lost to Chris Bassett and Mike Fiers. So they need to get better at that. But, I mean, this lineup is disgusting, like you guys mentioned. Tim Anderson, Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada, Jose Abreu, Luis Robert, if he can play well, Yasmani Grandal. I mean, that's just a great lineup to pair it up with a very good pitching staff. And I agree, they're the second best team in the American League. I think that their floor is actually higher than the Yankees because the Yankees, their ceiling is much higher, but with their injuries, obviously, like their floor can drop out like we saw them last year. They would have missed the playoffs if it wasn't for the expanded playoffs because the White Sox would have been the 5 seed as opposed to the Yankees being the 5 seed because they got second place in their division. So that was certainly an interesting thing. The Twins, I think they're going to be a wild card team. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be. That loaded lineup, along with a very good pitching staff as well, with Kenta Maeda and Jose Barrios at the top, and then a pretty solid bullpen. Obviously, losing Trevor May doesn't help it, but really solid pitching staff for them as well. And that is going to wrap up this episode of the Golden Sombrero. You guys got any last comments before we head out?
Yeah, this Twins team is going to be in the wild card. I think they're still very talented. They've got a lot of power in that lineup. I just think that looking at the 2 teams, the White Sox are better.
Cool. Any last comments? Are you good?
I'm good, but yeah, I think just overall keep an eye out for how the White Sox turn out, and there's definitely a few teams in both divisions, the NL Central and the AL Central, who may not make the playoffs this year, but also just keep an eye out for the way they develop, for the way they sort of play this year, because that's going to indicate how they play 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line from now. Especially those teams who are sort of in the midst of a rebuild or sort of coming to the end of their rebuild and are like, okay, we're going to make a run here at a postseason. So just keep an eye on those teams.
All right, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Golden Sombrero Show. Next week, we'll be talking about the American League West and the NL West, and then our final show before the regular season starts, we'll go with a full standings breakdown along with our awards. So be sure to look out for that. Next Saturday, we'll be live here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on BlazeRealOnline.com, thank you. We'll be live again next week, Monday night as well. Thank you all for tuning into the Golden Sombrero Show. On behalf of Cole Bradley and Ryan Blank, this has been the Golden Sombrero Show talking about the latest news in baseball. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.